Welcome back to episode number 4. I am so excited. I have a special guest here today. Her name is Kalen Olson. She's a Course in Miracles coach. She also is a healer, among many other things. And I'm really excited to have her on here to kind of dive into what the Course in Miracles is. And in talking with her briefly, I was really interested in how she uses this concept of love to heal in so many different ways, whether it be relationships, in friendships, whatever it is going on in your life. Just really excited to touch on that topic. And thank you so much for joining me today, Kalen. If you could just give us a little bit of background about you and sort of what you do, and then we'll get into the interview.
Sure. So I work with people on just really healing those limiting fear thoughts and really gaining more clarity in their life. So we touch on really any aspect of healing the mind and what's really possible for people to tap into a deeper sense of love, deeper sense of clarity, and using their intuition in life.
Awesome. So what sort of got you into teaching on the Course in Miracles?
Well, first, I also want to say thank you so much for having me, Lindsay. I'm really, really excited to be here with you, and I love talking about this stuff. So I got into A Course in Miracles about 6 years ago, and I was really at a turning point in my life. I was looking at everything and realizing that on a survival level, it was kind of working, but on a deeper level, it wasn't working for me. The way I was living my life, I needed something more, and I wanted to learn what the gurus, what the philosophers, what all the spiritual teachers were talking about love. And I realized that I had a lot to learn, and I wanted to feel a lot of relationships in my family that still felt like I wasn't scratching the surface. I had been to therapists, I had done counseling, I had used tools that I thought would work. And I had gotten a bachelor's degree. I was somebody who on the outside looked like they had it all together, but underneath, I really wasn't quite sure about how to feel successful in my life, not just have it look like that on the outside. And so I did a lot of searching. I did a lot of different reading books, reading different philosophers' takes on love. And I grew up actually in the church. So I was raised Lutheran. And so I was very familiar with the teachings of Jesus. And I remember reading the Bible and looking at, when he was talking about the fruits of the Spirit and realizing, oh my God, I don't know what that is. I'm not experiencing that. And I had, had leadership positions in church. I had been going to church and doing all of these things that felt like they should be working for me, right? And for whatever reason, it just wasn't. And I loved, the things that Jesus was saying. I thought they were so beautiful, but I didn't understand that disconnect. And at the same time, I also looked out into the world and I saw a lot of hurt from the church about people who were feeling rejected. And I was so confused how that message was getting convoluted. And I wanted to know more. And I thought there was something there that I was missing. And so I just had this determination to find a different way. And that's what a lot of people say when they get into Course in Miracles. I just was ready for a different way. And that's really what it was for me. And so I just was researching. I was getting my hands on every type of spiritual practice there was. And I was really looking. And I was waiting for this aha light bulb to go off in me. And I actually stumbled first on this book called Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard. And he's a very big Course in Miracles teacher. And that book blew my mind. And it's so far out there that, it shattered my worldview about what I thought about love, what I thought about the Jesus message, that realizing that he never actually came to start a religion, that he came to shake things up for people and really become their own teacher and tap into that love for themselves. But it got completely misunderstood, and the government came in and it became a message of control instead of the message of rebellion and liberation that he came to teach, that Buddha came to teach, that all of these teachers are asking us to really look at and to really live. And so that was really compelling to me because it really helped start healing my relationship with the church. And it helped me start healing my relationship with what I thought about Jesus and the Holy Spirit and all of these things. And I could realize that love is possible for me. Healing is possible for me. I don't care about what's happened. I don't care about, my story. And, I think every one of us goes through stories of suffering. And for me, I had these beliefs that I had to work through, that I wanted to believe in love for myself. And I had come from a family of divorced parents, and, they were able to find love again. And I'm very happy for how things turned out with their love partners. But at the same time, I had to question my own beliefs for myself. And so A Course in Miracles was, for me, I'm somebody who likes structure, and I like give me these steps. So Buddhism for me was really hard to grasp, because I was like, what do I even do? Like, how do I be Buddhist? And with this Christian background. And so A Course in Miracles spoke to me because it gives this beautiful structure, and it's broken up into a workbook for students, and it's broken up into like these gorgeous, just general passages, right? But then also you can go through this year-long study of undoing the ego. And I love psychology. I love all those principles. So for me, it was like this gorgeous psychological self-study practice. And so it gave structure. It gave me like, if you do these things, you're going to experience love. And I was like, okay, that's what I need. I need this structure. And so I went through the workbook for that year, and it was really challenging. It was really uncomfortable, because I had to look at those things in myself that I didn't want to look at, and realizing that the path to love was about undoing blocks within me, that love is my natural essence. Love is all of our natural essence, but it's the undoing. That's the practice. And so that's what I started getting into, to really start cultivating love within myself.
Yeah. I can totally relate, because I grew up in Christian faith, and my family is still very religious. And for me, like going into the church, I always felt a disconnect as well. I felt like to me, it was like, why would there be a God who loves us that's going to punish us and send us to hell for sinning? And it just really didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I had a lot of frustration with the church, and it was difficult for me to really even think about listening to what Jesus had to say, or diving into anything that mentioned the word God or religion. Did you struggle at all to let go of sort of the resentment, if you had any, from the church when?
No, because I was really fortunate. I went to a church that I just really adored. And I think that the teachings were very pure there in love. We had just a very, very humble and loving pastor. And I think our family had a unique experience, but I don't think that every family has that. And there were still, though, even though like I had that experience, I still, reading the Bible, there were messages that I tuned into about control that are not always like the truth. And so you can read parts of the Bible, right, and see these messages of love, but then you can read other parts of the Bible and pick up on other things about obeying who we are to be, when sometimes that's not really, I think, the message of love. I think the deeper message of love is that you already are perfect, actually, and your desires are important and they matter, and that the will of God or universe, or whatever you want to say, like I'm a lot more open to those terms now, is really just that we are love and we come from love, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah. How do you, for someone that does have a lot of fear kind of crossing over or walking away from a religious background, how would you recommend stepping into and opening up to sort of new things or new concepts and new ideas? Because fear is really the absence of love, right? So I've always been curious about, helping people, to guide people out of religion and maybe seeing things in a different perspective.
Well, I think that's the beautiful journey that everyone's on, right? And it's unfolding perfectly for them. And so, like, if religion and going to church works and it makes people happy, then keep going. If what you're getting is love, keep going. I'm not anti-church. And at the same time, if you are like feeling like there's this yearning in you for a different message, then go with that. And like, who's to say you can't do church and you can't do A Course in Miracles? I think a lot of people do, or whatever you're into, if you're into different practices. But it's, it can be really helpful too to just seek out different books to read that have people's just different ideas wrapped around what is love. And then you're going to find something that resonates, because then our mind is like absorbing these different ideas. And so reading different books on different paths and practices can be like so enriching about realizing, okay, what do I believe? And there's so many amazing books out there now to really, I think, help people on their path.
Yeah. I've noticed a lot of challenges, like working with clients. People don't really have an idea, first of all, who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, because there are so many different teachings and different modalities out there to healing, it's like it can be very overwhelming to just choose one or to go one direction. So if you're just starting out, like when you were just starting out on your healing journey, was there a certain practice that you did? Was it like a meditation? What did you find to be the most helpful to kind of clear those blocks that you were talking about?
Yeah. Well, it was really interesting. And I think this is pretty common actually for a lot of people, is that it started as an intellectual journey before it became an experiential journey.
Yeah.
I needed those intellectual ideas to wrap my head around, to say, what are my beliefs? Who am I? I had those questions too, like, who am I?
Yeah.
I know I'm not all of this anger. And at that point, I also was questioning my career path and just like so many things. It really was just a rediscovery of everything. And so Gary Renard's teachings were so pivotal in helping me, because he has a series of books. He has Disappearance of the Universe, Love Has Forgotten No One, and there's another one, Oh, Your Immortal Reality. And so those books were so helpful because they gave me practices in the books to do. And so that kind of got me jump started, because I was attaching practices to theory. So it wasn't theory isolated. And I think that's where I was struggling with Christianity, is because it was strictly theory with praying a little bit. And I didn't know how to go beyond that to the deeper teachings. So his books are so beautiful because they have theory and practices. And so from there, he also has a really cool book, The Lifetimes When Jesus and Buddha Knew Each Other. And so that one's really neat. But so with those books, also he has a meditation CD. And so I just jumped in and I got the meditation CD, because I had been dabbling with different styles of meditation. Am I doing Christian meditation, Buddhist meditation, transcendental? There's so many.
So many.
So I buffet, and I tried so many, and I think you have to really find what you feel like is your path and what works for you.
Yeah.
And so I did his meditation CD, and that was really a big aha moment, that I don't need to sit at home and meditate for an hour every day to find peace. That there are 10-minute meditations, and those can be so healing, so nourishing. And so I did those. And I did that practice for, I would say, like 4 years or so. And I really was getting the intellectual ideas of A Course in Miracles. And I was starting to see some benefit. My anxiousness was going down a little bit. There were like just these little cues that I was noticing. And I told myself, I said, I'm going to practice this for 5 years. And if nothing comes of it, then I'm done and I'm moving on. Yeah. But if I am getting some real juice here, then I need to stick with it. And so I gave myself that time, because it's like, at the end of the day, what else am I doing, right? Like, you know, I'm going to my job, I'm doing these things, but I do have the time to invest in my private life to try these things. And I know that, like anything, developing any hobby, any skill takes time. And I wanted to allow myself that time to say, for myself, is this working? Yeah. And so at that point, after those 4 years, I really started realizing that I was getting the teachings, but I wanted more depth. I wanted to go deeper. And so I reached out to another course teacher, Maria Felipe, and she is a fabulous course teacher. And we worked together and we did a session together, and we did a guided meditation session together. And it blew me out of the water about the healing that's possible that A Course in Miracles is actually talking about. And I was like, oh my God, like when it says that fear doesn't exist, it truly doesn't exist, and we can actually embody that and experience that. Not like mentally tell ourselves these thoughts aren't true. Like I'm talking about like really feeling that place of love and navigating from that space as an absolute truth in life. And so she really helped me really access those deeper truths and take it from intellectual to start making it more experiential. And so then that's when I was able to start like really diving in and then be able to start working with clients in that capacity.
Yeah. What is one of the biggest challenges you see in your clients? Like for me, I notice it's like self-love is the biggest hurdle for most people, is like accepting who they are, loving who they are, because we've been so programmed to need to be perfect and accept it, in that way to be accepted or validated. So what would you say is like, you notice the biggest struggle for people in terms of love?
Yeah, I would say that it's really about embracing these teachings, that there's a resistance there sometimes, that it's comfortable sometimes to not do the work. And it's so interesting because I think that's actually true in every industry. I used to work in communications and alumni relations in a college of pharmacy. And I talked to the pharmacists, and they would tell me time and time again, their biggest challenge was like patient compliance, or, just patients, following up on their healthcare plan. And I think that's true in every single industry, is like, what is that resistance in us to accessing the truth? What do we, and that's what A Course in Miracles is about. It's saying, do I actually want this resistance? Do I want things to be shitty, or do I want things to be good? And realizing that sometimes things being shitty actually gives me something. It gives me a sense of identity to say, poor me. And that I'm going to get love. Somebody's going to give me love if I say poor me. Yeah. And I had to work through that myself. And I still do. Like I still do that work every day. I still do that in certain areas when my mind starts to slip. That is all of our path, that resistance to love, and realizing that and giving ourselves some grace and some kindness to say, and this was what A Course in Miracles teacher Ken Wapnick would say, like I'm just a little afraid of love today. I'm going to be kind with myself and say, I'm just a little afraid of love.
Yeah. That's it's like the worthiness, right? Of the worthiness of being able to receive love.
Yep.
A lot of people is the struggle. It's like, well, why are you complimenting me? Why are you giving me this attention? I feel like a lot of people really struggle with that feeling of worthiness. Is that something that part of your journey was just feeling worthy?
Oh, absolutely. Because we're comfortable with our current story. And so to say, is there another story, that's like so radical. And then we need to get uncomfortable a little bit and say, is this going to be painful to have a new story? Is that going to be hurtful? And realize that the ego feels comfortable and love can feel like an attack because it feels different and it feels like the other. And so continually telling myself and ourselves that it's safe to do this. It's safe to step into this. It's okay to surrender.
Yeah. How do you feel like love and trust go together? Because I noticed the biggest hurdle in my life, especially in romantic relationships and also friendships, I feel that I put up a wall oftentimes with people because of a trust issue. Do you notice that as well?
Yes, absolutely. It's so huge. And it's something I'm tapping more and more into in my business, that I want to go there, about the idea of trust and realizing, like, think about the times that we're happy and really like you're petting a puppy, or just like think about a time, that puppy's not going to hurt you. That what's happening in this moment. you've probably had moments before where you've been able to have trust. So you're like in the moment, you've had a good history with it. And you can have that radical trust in the moment. So happiness and trust, love and trust are absolutely related. And so it always comes back to undoing what are those blocks in us. And they could have been from our past current life, they could have been from other lifetimes, but it's healing that in the present moment and developing that radical trust and continually telling ourselves that it's safe to love, it's safe to be here, this moment is perfect as it is. And, you know, there's lots of different tools, of course, to use too, meditation and affirmations to develop that trust that's accessible in the present moment.
Yeah. And I feel like forgiveness is a big piece too,
Mm-hmm.
to that space. Like, have you had to go through and do like forgiveness for people in your life and also yourself? Because I know that was a big part of my healing, was like literally writing out a letter of forgiveness to everyone that I felt hurt me. And then, you know, and also forgiving them, because what we're creating in our reality and these relationships that we have is also, there's something going on within us that we have to forgive too. So was that part of your path?
Absolutely. And I didn't know how to forgive. And here I am coming from a Christian background where the main foundation is about forgiveness, right? And I didn't know how to do that. And A Course in Miracles is such a breakthrough teaching because it's saying that there's actually nothing there to forgive, which is so radical to say that we actually, in truth, are love. You're love, I'm love, we all are. And so that's the remembering, that's the undoing. So we forgive something that actually isn't true. And in that forgiving, we're creating a new relationship together with each other. And the idea of forgiving is really for the person who's doing the work. Like, yes, it benefits the other person, of course, because they're like feeling some kindness, right? But really it's about us. It's about us coming into our power, us stepping out of being a victim. If I feel like somebody did something wrong and I forgive them in the traditional Christian sense, then it means that I'm slightly better than them. It means that they are still a dirty sinner. And it means that that's not love.
Yeah.
So true forgiveness is seeing somebody in their truth, which is light, which is love. And in that radical moment of seeing them, it brings that back to ourselves, because then we can no longer be a victim as well. So it's restoring peace to both people.
Yeah. I think the hardest part for a lot of us is getting out of that victim mentality, because like you said, when you're a victim in some way, it's serving you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So to clear these beliefs, do you do any work in the subconscious? Because I know that's like a big part of, if we've got a pretty strong subconscious belief, it's almost like running our lives, right?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I love affirmations. I love like seeing somebody as if they're already perfect, and seeing them as if they're perfect light, perfect love. And really the practice always comes back to, do I want this? Yeah. Do I actually truly want this? And being so radically honest and saying like, maybe I do kind of want to be a victim right now because it feels kind of good. Yeah. But then the point where we're fed up, all of us do, all of us get to that point. And then that's where we can start bringing in that other presence and saying, there must be a better way. Do I want to be right, or do I want to be happy? And routine asking that. But to answer your question, yes, I absolutely do subconscious work. There is a lot of power there too in healing the subconscious. So that's the work I do in guided meditations. I do that with myself. I do that with clients. And so we heal a lot of those those dark thoughts that feel true, that never really are. And so then that, when you heal those, then you can, like, it's impossible to believe in the ego anymore. It's truly, truly impossible at that point. And then at that point, it just becomes a process of undoing to return back to love.
Yeah. So if someone's like super in a victim story, like fear story, I know for me, like the whole concept of love was out there. Like I grew up with a lot of conditional love, and I did not have any clue what love was. I thought it was always just like I was supposed to feel it at some point in my life when I met someone, or, you know, it would happen occasionally. Like, how would you define love? Like, what does it feel like? What does it look like to someone that is still kind of wrapping their mind around moving into that space?
Yeah, I mean, like in scientific terms, it's a radical acceptance of the present moment and just embracing what is. And so, like, um, maybe we've had memories of when we were kids and we were just like crying or super angry, and someone just came and gave us a hug, and they just radically accepted us in that present moment and didn't feel like anything needed to be changed or any of that. And that's what A Course in Miracles, I think, is inviting, is this radical acceptance of the present moment,
Yeah.
and just embracing what is and loving all of those parts. But I almost like, if we don't know what love is, I almost even like the idea of being okay with the concept that we're just removing blocks, and that practice to do that and make that the focus. Don't even worry about love. Don't even worry about being love. Don't, that will come and that's your truth, but focus on the undoing of what isn't love. And then naturally you're going to feel it. And like, yes, it, you know, it feels like this warm blanket. It feels like just this like juicy, like I could be here forever. This just really deep satisfaction with the present moment. And sometimes we can feel that when the ego isn't present because we get something that we've been wanting. So we feel satisfied in that present moment, but it's really just the ego is quiet for a little bit. But we can know that that's kind of what it's like, that's possible more and more in our lives when we tap into our truth.
Yeah. Do you feel like things have really shifted in your life once you started living from that space?
Yeah. And I was really terrified. I was really scared to do it, which was my ego telling me not to, telling me don't be loving, you're not going to be accepted if you step out and do these teachings. But I wanted to share what had transformed my life. And I knew that I had to, because I knew it would benefit other people. And this is such a new teaching. A Course in Miracles, you know, only came about in the 70s. So it's this very new teaching that has, if it's helped me so much, then I know that other people who have anxiety and fear, that it could be helpful to them.
Yeah.
And so it was really scary for me to start sharing these teachings. I was really worried, was I going to be accepted? So there were a lot of my own ego fear thoughts coming up. And the interesting part about calling out our ego is that it cannot survive when we share our fears out loud. And so, like, I knew that was part of my practice, was that I had to get these fears out. I had to just do it, because if we hold on to those fears, then we're kind of like protecting them, right?
Yeah.
They have to those fears have to survive. And it can be really terrifying to share those fears, because the ego's thought is, am I going to be accepted? Always, like, for these things that make us feel like we're less than, for whatever weird reason. But when I started opening up and I shared in baby steps, right? I that's how I did it. And then I was like, oh my God, people are loving this. I'm getting messages from people saying, what you're sharing is refreshing. I love what you're teaching. And then I started getting clients reaching out, and now it's like, because I opened that door, it not only brought me self-acceptance, but it's helped me connect more with people. Because before, when I was like this, how could I connect with people really in an authentic way? How can any of us?
Yeah.
So when we are open to sharing those fears, that's where the connection happens.
Yeah.
And there's women, I think, teaching more about this, that vulnerability is your superpower. And I just keep finding it to be so true.
Yeah. Did you do any like shadow work? Have you ever heard of shadow work? Was that
Oh,
part of the
yeah.
introduction?
Yep. That's a huge, huge teaching in A Course in Miracles, is that everyone is our mirror. And so they're showing us something, like, if we feel triggered by somebody, that means we secretly believe it about ourselves. And so that's like our shadow coming out, to be looked at. And I think in the earlier teachings of A Course in Miracles, I tried to get rid of my shadow. You know, those parts that I thought would be unlovable, the anger, the anxiety, all of that, I tried to get rid of them with A Course in Miracles. But that's not how it works. And so it really became like a practice of radically loving on all of those parts, like I would a small child. Like all of that type of attention I would give, like it's no longer about, oh, you shouldn't feel angry, like, oh, shame on you for feeling angry, or this or that or the other. Like it's just about radically accepting all of those parts of us, and that's a huge part of A Course in Miracles.
Did you notice that it shifted your relationship? Like, are you married?
I have a boyfriend.
Okay. Do you notice like taking these tools and now applying them to your relationships with other people? Has that sort of shifted the way people respond to you?
Oh my God. Yeah, it's been huge.
Yeah.
It's been huge. That's like one of the biggest blessings, I think. And it's not to say that I don't still get triggered. I do, but I have a practice now to come back to. So I'm not perfect. I get triggered. I get upset. Those things happen to me.
Yeah.
But now I have the tools and now I know how to work with it. Whereas before it would rule my life and I didn't know how they were overpowering me.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has, like, in a sense, gone away because I have put these practices into work. I was able to just have such a beautiful healing relationship with my mom. And instead of like needing her validation, her acceptance, like it's been such a beautiful transformation for our relationship where we just like both radically accept each other and love each other. And that's been like so huge and healing. That I have a sense now of anything's possible. Like it really truly is, like, that's why it's called A Course in Miracles. I definitely believe in them now for myself. And it's absolutely helped with me and my partner. And just like changed where we started as a couple. And realizing that I had inherited a lot of like practices from my parents of how that dynamic was. And again, like I love them so much. It's not like, I'm not like upset about anything that's happened in my past. It's all been a learning tool. And that's like a radical gift in and of itself. People can be helpful to us to learn things, right?
Yeah.
And so it would help me work through a lot of triggers too early in our relationship to get to a point now where like I have the tools and we own both of our sides. Like it's not about blaming. It's never like we can never ever change anybody. And like that's the radical truth that we have to come to. It's like, oh shit, like
Yeah.
I changed that person. So what now?
Yeah.
And that's great. That's a great place to be in because we don't have to. And that's what the teachings in A Course in Miracles are about, is that we are changing our perception of the present moment. We're coming back into our power of love and knowing that nothing can upset me outside of me. That's so powerful. And when I take ownership, that's really all that I can do. Like, how am I taking ownership of myself in this relationship? And and then it frees up the other person to do the same. Then there's not like this, like messy blame game.
It's like if you're out there sort of looking for love, it means that you don't feel it within yourself, right? And you're trying to fill a void. And I've noticed that those are some of the most toxic relationships, is when you're trying to get something from the other person and you have all these expectations and then they don't meet them, and it's just this big mess that you kind of tumble into. So that was sort of my journey, like really to love and finding love and acceptance for myself was through relationships with other people.
Mm-hmm.
The toxic nature of the relationships was just showing me how much I didn't love myself.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people struggle with that. And a lot of people that I work with, like they're trying to find love, but they haven't quite done the work on themselves to have that healthy, whole relationship with another person. And I like how you were talking about, you still get triggered, because it's not like the healing journey is linear. It's not like you're going to move past it and never be triggered again. But the whole idea is to be able to have the tools to come back to when you are triggered, and know that you are in control and you can handle when you're being triggered, instead of going into that anxiety, out of control state.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely struggled and can relate to the anxiety piece so much. It's like when we're in anxiety, I feel like we're constantly living in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And you're trying to predict what's going to happen based on past outcomes or past circumstances. And what sort of tips would you give to someone that is dealing with anxiety and maybe depression, like how to sort of move through that based on the teachings that you use?
Yeah, I mean, that's how I started, right? So it like, I can't promise overnight remedies, because this really is a practice for life. Like, A Course in Miracles is a lifelong practice. And but at the same time, there are specific tools in there, like the year-long self-study practice is hugely beneficial to really start being aware of our thoughts and realizing that it's our thoughts that disturb us. It's our thoughts in the present moment that are actually disturbing us. And so I had a lot of anxiety and depression starting out. And when I started taking back the power of my mind and realizing that my thoughts could actually be changed, that was really radical for me. And taking it a step further to realize we can only ever be creating in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't ever actually be creating in the future. And that frees up like a lot of unnecessary energy that we're expending, to realize how can I undo this fear in the present moment and get into a place of radical trust again, like, and giving it over. It's really about giving it over to Holy Spirit or your inner wisdom or whatever you want to call it. Giving it over to that part of yourself. All of us have a decision maker in us. So we have this thing that's either choosing fear or it's choosing love. And so getting in touch with that decision maker and giving over the situation and saying, I know I'm not happy right now. I'm open for a different way of doing this. Show me a different way. Show me a new way forward. I'm open to how things happen. And that's the other tricky part, I think. That was tricky for me, at least, of like being open to how things unfolded instead of saying, okay, I've given it over, but I'm saying this is how it has to happen.
Yeah, control. Yeah.
That's not really giving it over. Being really radically open to how things unfold is the radical trust. And then we're getting into a place of really creating from love, creating from joy in the present moment. And then the future automatically takes care of itself. And so we don't have to have these imaginary things about the future of what can and can't happen, because we've undone ourselves in the present moment. And that's what the practice is about, is how do we undo that fear thought in the present moment?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love the Course in Miracles teachings. I love everything that you're talking about. I think it's so helpful. And the idea that, love is really what heals us in so many ways, and returning to that place of love. I've seen it happen in my life, transform my life, just being able to remember that all there is love. I think that's like the biggest thing for me. What would you say, like, your biggest, if you could share one thing with the world, like, what would be that thing?
I think that a lot of people are like, they want money, they want the dream job, they want the dream relationship. And those things will take care of themselves when you undo the ego.
Yeah.
Because your outer circumstances are going to start shifting when you heal those blocks within you.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's all about, just like you said, taking ownership, wanting to make the change, kind of being fed up with where you are in your life. You almost have to get to that point of like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm exhausted. And then deciding to make it a priority, just like you would go to the gym, or just like you would take care of any other thing in your life, like making that a priority to care for yourself and to do the work is just so important. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and kind of walking us through A Course in Miracles. I know it's such a big study and it's overwhelming sometimes, but being able to apply those tools to our lives is really transformative. And if someone wanted to work with you, what sort of coaching do you offer? Do you have like packages or just sessions? What does that look like?
Sure. So all of my teachings are rooted in A Course in Miracles. And so if people are wanting a practice like this, it's really great, because sometimes A Course in Miracles will always, it talks in very like esoteric or type of like iambic pentameter, however you say that. It talks in these really beautiful poetic words, but sometimes it can feel like, okay, how do I actually apply these to my life? And so the year-long practice is great, but for people who are like wanting to like make even more sense of things, they're wanting that more deeper clarity. How do I actually work with the ego with the lessons that are coming up in my life? I have an 8-week course that really teaches the principles of A Course in Miracles and how to create radical change, radical trust, deeper clarity, whether you're at work, whether in your life. So we get very, very particular about your own life and your own lessons that you're wanting to learn to shift things. And then I also do guided healing meditation sessions, and those are one-on-one with people as well. So those are like between 30 minutes to 2 hours. So we do like really deep, deep work in those sessions.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I love what you're doing for the world, and I love like your passion for this, and I can tell like how deep you are in this and how much you care about people, and it's so cool to see that. So thank you so much for all your information and for joining me today and for sharing your tools with the world. I'm excited to have you on this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lindsay. It was just a deep joy being on here with you. So
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us and for tuning in. And until next time, bye.